welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here, Indian Mendham Brain. Another week, of fun, contemplating the magical place we're at. Having this fun on planet Earth. Anyway, so there's just a lot of little things, just thoughts fly through the head about different ways of gaining perspective. And I always sort of fall back on the maze sort of argument that both your own brain is a maze to figure out how you're reacting and acting. That's one maze that you have to understand to be able to think and then have thoughts that say, hey, wait a minute, I have to think about that some more because I discovered that by looking at myself, that I figured out that I have certain triggers and that I shouldn't be triggered, and that there needs to be some mechanism I create to put some duct tape on the trigger so I can't pull it as quickly. Some sort of trick I have to do. My brain has to learn. And the way it learns is by first discovering it. First you have to discover you're stupid, or discover that you're flawed or broken, before you can try to glue a piece, which will be a reflexive reaction. The idea is to fix what's broken. So that part you're pretty sure, hey, yeah, that's a good idea. Fix the things that are broken. Usually a reliable thing to do. Like if you have a cement stairs or something and they're all crooked and crumbly and make it easy to fall down the stairs, you can figure out that probabilistically I should probably fix that because it's probably going to hurt something more than it's going to help something. I mean, it might kill the mailman or something, and he might be an asshole, and the new mailman might be really great and all that kind of stuff, but the odds are, and that's all you can go with, is rational probabilities. So you can know there's certain defects in your own little game you're playing. Well, anyway, then there's this big game, the world, and you can, use intelligence to learn statistically how things work, and, what's the game, how the game is played, and then you get back to the metaphor of comparing the big games, figuring out yourself, figuring out the real world, and then you start figuring out, well, yeah, if I make a game, I'm going to make it so it has rules, and then I'm trying to create fairness and deserve. Those are really good things. People score a point, they should deserve to get the point. They shouldn't cheat to get the point, and all that kind of crap. And so I engineer the game to be rational in those sense that I understand this deserve thing is a good idea, earning is a good idea. Those are all positive things, probabilistic. Yep, that's going to work. You reward things that are good, and you punish things that are bad. So I mean, the fundamental logic isn't that complicated. There's not much room for any disagreement about probabilities and statistics and all that kind of stuff. Unless you're out to just lie and cheat, which most people are, clearly. Because I could just use the analogy that people really do care, that people obey the rules in their sports, but they really don't care if they obey the rules in the real life game, right? We wouldn't let people inherit first base, Yankee Stadium, and we just let the sons and the sons, right? So we're gonna let the daughters play, because we haven't even achieved that sense of fairness. Like, yeah, if they can, they might as well, right? Who cares? Not that it can't happen or won't happen. It's just, I don't know whether a female's ever played professional baseball. Don't know if they've ever found one good enough or whatever. But anyway, regardless, don't want to get into that issue. Point is generally speaking, people can understand the concepts when they're looking at some game they want to watch, or a game they want to have some respect for. Then it has to have these rational rules. But like, again, civilization doesn't have to. We'll let all kinds of silly things go on where we'll say somebody earned it when they obviously didn't earn it. They just inherited it. And we wouldn't, like I said, you wouldn't let people inherit gold medals in the Olympics. Oh yeah, you win because your father won. So you win. Just kind of bullshit, obviously. So anyway, so that just gets you to how it just illustrates the logical breakdown that doesn't really matter if people do understand. Like I said, they do understand that deserve should have something to do with fairness, but they don't want to apply it when they have some self-advantage or they perceive it to be to their advantage, not to understand that truth. So they're all big on selling the truth, as long as what you glean is what they want you to glean. So it's almost like somebody could argue for atheism from their position of being a nice person and say, well, everybody should become an atheist, but you become a nice person, become a vegetarian and all this other stuff. But clearly other people become atheists, just gives them an excuse to say, well, there's no God and there's no punishment, so if I can get away with murder, I might as well murder. No problem. There's no ethical violations by any overt describable rules except some dopey social contract. I mean, so whether for good or bad, whether for personal self-interest, rape and murder kind of thing, or whether you murder somebody just because they're an asshole and they earn it and deserve it, and so I might as well be the deliverer of what they've deserved or earned. And that opens that door, obviously, because you don't have any of this God crap to sit there and tell you what the real rules are. The real fake rules. But then you can see the hypocrisy in this notion that, oh yes, I'm going to believe in a God who can't figure out what fairness and deserve is. I mean, why, there's no point in having a God if he's so dumb that he can't figure out that deserve and earn should have something to do with it. And that he shouldn't be playing this game like, I'm going to send you to hell because your mother was a crack whore. I mean, because we know that's how the reality works, right? That the criminals aren't criminals from birth. They don't have bad souls. They have shitty circumstances, and we know that. We know if we were put in the shitty circumstances, then we'd be a shithead too. And those are just obvious facts. And, so they'll play a game like, okay, somehow those obvious facts aren't facts, and I'm going to pretend that God knows what he's doing, and somehow he's going to create this fake place, heaven and hell, and that's when all this deserve shit will happen, is somewhere else it will happen. It won't happen in the maze. No, it'll happen in the imaginary maze up in the sky. Or you'll get your little rewards and your little punishments. As if it would do any good after, nobody can see you being punished. So that doesn't even do much good as deterrence. So the whole value of reward and punishment is sort of in the idea of the fact that we mimic behavior and we see things happen to other people, and then you watch somebody slip on a banana peel in front of you on the sidewalk and you start looking for banana peels. It's just logical. So the whole idea of reward and punishment isn't so much about the individual getting what they deserve. It's the idea of good and bad being properly understood, because bad gets what it deserves and good gets what it deserves. Create the correlation between the two things by creating a mechanism that earns it. They get what they earn. Obviously, obviously the God doesn't care about those things at all, in any real way that you can see. But anyway, so there's no reason to believe in him when it's just silly. Just no evidence of the God's existence. And it's a silly, stupid little old fable. You might as well believe in the little monsters on a totem pole. I mean, it's just dumb. I mean, it's really a stupid thing to do, is to be a religious kook. But then these idiots will argue that it's that it's some sort of benign stupidity, believing in this fake God thing. And if I imagine myself believing in a God, I certainly can't imagine myself being any of the things I am. If God says it's okay to eat the animals, well, why should I judge his judgment? Why should I say he's wrong? That doesn't make any sense. And then the whole idea of, if God says this is a really good game, you just don't understand it, why should I doubt that? If I believe in this intelligence, it's somehow has figured out a way to say, no, earning's not really important and deserve really isn't important. Don't worry about any of those things. They're not important. Well, when I know a game can't be played without those things. There's no game to be played. It's just ludicrous. You call all the games that don't have rules, you call them ludicrous, because it's just, that's all you're doing. You're just being ludicrous. So I mean, it's just, there's a pitiful irony in people saying, well, you don't have to become intelligent by having intelligent concepts in your head and intelligent notions about reality. You can somehow draw the intelligent conclusion that life is futile and stupid by believing in God. Like somehow there's a road from God to, no, there's no point in making more humans. When clearly the whole point of God doing it was because it had some kind of purpose and function. So how is that possible? I mean, I can't really imagine being an antinatalist or an ethicist or any of this stuff if I actually believed God was a possibility, that some creator did this on purpose, some creator that had intelligence, that wasn't a complete psychotic lunatic. So it just doesn't make any sense to make silly arguments like that. There's a chain of reasoning, and you have to obey the rules of reasoning, and there's just no point in having illogical conversations just to get somebody to admit it. I mean, it's sort of like a cop saying to a criminal, you're going to stay in this room and I'm going to be beating you with this rubber hose until you sign the confession. I mean, it's just cheating so badly that you can't have any respect for that, and it's just a bizarre and disgusting cheat to say it's okay for you to convince imbeciles because you don't care about reasoning and logic. You just want them to say, yeah, life is poopy. That's not really what you're after. It doesn't even. It's more. It's degrading of intelligence, and it's also more insulting than you need to be of the human capacity to understand. We have the capacity to reason. We can do vocabulary, and people can have a way of doing vocabulary that's compelling and interesting because they have some sort of Richard Burton-esque voice and some kind of thing that just, wow, they could just give you a cake recipe and it could sound interesting. So clearly humans can do this much better, and that's all I'm arguing for, is the level of the argument and the way the argument's had, and it's got to sort of be in stages, and people have to agree on certain axioms to be able to build anything called a rational conversation. And so, in my opinion, the truth of value, the fact that the thing that's precious in the universe is the feeling thing, the capacity to have neurons that connect together in a certain pattern and create the sensations that we have, and that they have such dramatic capacity to be torturous and blissful, is the origin of all value. And it really doesn't matter what we're contemplating. I mean, whether you're feeling the bliss because it's a lovely sunrise or it's a lovely sunset, or it just doesn't matter what it is that gets you off or does it for you. It just matters that something does for you, that the does process takes place, and you achieve moments of comfort and bliss, I guess let's use that word, and that you avoid these very negative things that, yes, you can get all negative because people's, girls' skirt lines are too low, or hairstyles are too silly, or some of the little things can irritate you and cause you grief, but we know those are mostly just subjective nonsense, and it really doesn't matter. And the only thing that really should be causing us grief is when we know something is hurting something else. When some waste is being created, somebody's falling off a bridge that didn't need to, somebody's having an experience that's going to be very bad, like all the people dying right now in ways they shouldn't be dying. They should be allowed to do the nice little morphine thing and slide gracefully. There's somebody sort of disconnected from me personally who died this week, and it went very well. I mean, you go from walking and talking, and then 5 days later, you're done. and you're of the age where that's appropriate and all of that crap, and you can do your goodbyes and all that stuff in a sensible way, and then you just go to sleep for a while, and they just up the dose and you're gone. And that's what everybody should be entitled to, is as graceful as possible. And it seems insipidly insane that we can't even have that rational conversation. I mean, that axiom can't be understood and accepted, and the only reason why it can't be is because it's against this stupid religion thing, this stupid, idiotic notion that somehow God would scowl at not torturing, torture your fellow man, that somehow God has the expectation that we somehow suck and drag every little heartbeat to its last little heartbeat, that we force the heart to actually beat every single last beat, and that we don't cut anything a break, because it's somehow God's job, and we know God's not doing the job. He never said that's his job, so to speak. There's no evidence that that's his job. It's just in this edict of this Judeo-Christian bullshit religions. And it's just a horrid, awful product that's created, all this unnecessary pain. And so all these people think these religious people are harmless. They're not harmless. They put Jack Kevorkian in jail for 7 fucking years, the religious kooks, the fucking Catholics. Excuse my French, but you should have no tolerance for what that religion has done. For every penny you give this stupid pope, he just causes more pain and suffering on earth. Every penny is spent on making torture devices. They're not soothing anybody's pain. They're not comforting anybody. They're telling ignorant, stupid people to have more kids than they can take care of. It's ludicrous. Anyway, that's not really the subject of the video, but the very idea that there's some compatibility between these ideas is it's like the politics has become so obviously, dramatically incompatible. There's just, yes, kill them. Oh, that's your party affiliation? Yes, well, I hope you get run over by a truck. There's no other feeling to have towards these people because they're wrong about everything. It's like black is white and white is black between the two sides. And there's just, that's a good news story in the sense that this divisiveness and this passion will lead to probably war and, perhaps a condition that will put the human race in an even more vulnerable condition to be annihilated, in the sense that the technology will get in the hands of people who can do the job right. Finish it off. But anyway, so it's something to look forward to, in the sense that it doesn't seem at all sustainable, all of this diversity and conflict about something that shouldn't be a complex story. You can just look at the little skeleton kind of thing, and you can see our evolution. You can see the gross facts of this machine. It's the android. Okay, we're just androids, and we've been allowed to get programmed by absolute nonsense, mush, cartoons. People are programmed for their life based on music videos and just rubbish. Gives them some theme for their existence. It's just a terrible insult to our intelligence that we allow it to be fed with such gross and disgusting synthetic crap. So anyway, I did doing some physics stuff. I ran across a Sean Carroll. He's a physicist, so they say, and believes in this multiverses and all that kind of rubbish, silly nonsense. And that's sort of another example of, here you have all these intelligent people who are just talking nonsense and babble, and you just see it in their conversation. They think they've seriously done some looking around at the maze, and their observations are so trivial. Look at there's one of those French towery things over there. oh, little Eiffel Tower, oh, look at pretty clouds. I mean, they're not seeing anything. You know, their vision is so skewed by their putrid human programming, you know, that they can't see any piece of reality at all. And these are intelligent people, you know, so they haven't fallen for the complete joke of the traditional religion, but they have so much of the traditional religion's pieces, you know, its artifacts. You know, they grew up with totem poles, and so they, you know, oh yeah, I know he's not really a monster or a demon, so I'll just put Mickey Mouse there instead, you know, and I'll put, you know, 58-inch TV in there, and I'll put, you know, I'll put all my own little bullshit icons of crap in there and pretend that's what it's all about. Oh, the beauty of science. They'll have like a pretty picture of the universe, little colors and everything. They colorized it, of course, you know, to make it more pleasant to view. And they think they've done something like really contemplate the significance of our reality and understand just how silly this is to birth a bunch of robots in all these different locations and give them these silly life experiences and turn them into little cyborgs of pop culture crapola or whatever, nationalistic culture crapola. Ugh. It's just so pathetic. So anyway, that's what I figured we'd do, and such. So, not formatted to the size of the screen and whatnot. Sorry, just have to play it the little box. But anyway, so this was the part where, you know, he was talking about Newton and being very religious, and then just get into a little bit of philosophy for 5 minutes. So I just thought I'd play some of it as evidence of just how pathetic smart people really are in terms of how they haven't paid any attention to the details of what they're looking at. And so they think evolution is some sort of happy little circle of life crap because, well, yeah, it hasn't happened to them. You know, this is all just such an immature perspective of, you know, thinking you're everlasting and that you don't have to contemplate what you're really walking through. It's like the fun house at the amusement park. You know, they think it's all just, you know, for fun. You know. And they don't take any of it seriously as if it's a real, you know, that the teeth digging into the arteries is, you know, and the blood spurting. You know, it's just artistic. You know, it's not a real thing that happened.
How do you incorporate religion into science?
I don't. I think that religion had a good run, and science has sort of moved it out of the way a little bit. You know, not just.
Okay, it hasn't. So again, science hasn't moved it out of the way because what has it replaced it with? Silly entanglement. It's like ESP between sub particles. You know, they have ESP. It's just full of UFO wishful thinking. All kinds of like AI is the big thing again. All of a sudden, everybody's AI is going to cure this. AI is going to do this. AI, what's it going to do? It can do math problems. AI can't do anything. It's not going to do a better job of analyzing life because analyzing life is getting those right answers from the very beginning. It's recognizing that when the crocodile grabs the little, 6-week-old wildebeest and brings it into the water and swirls it around and beats the crap out of it and drowns it, that's a real tragedy. It's not just some sort of, oh, that's a nothing experience that just took place on Earth. It doesn't mean anything. The pain and the anguish and the fear and the trauma, that doesn't mean anything. It's irrelevant. It's something to watch on TV. If you can't get if the AI can't get that right, it can't get the story right. So it has no hope because humans are going to program it to think, well, that's just part of the fun. You know, wish it could be me, right? I love to do that every day. No, I don't think you would. Let's see if this works.
Science. There are things that religion does, purposes that it serves that have nothing to do with the scientific goal of describing what happens in the world, right? But what I think is that science has been so successful at describing what happens in the world that a lot of the motivation for explaining things by reference.
All right, so a lot of crap there, right? So religion serves some sort of purposes. What purposes would that be? Keep stupid people stupid, make people into torturing assholes, pretend, a lot of fake I love you bullshit, a bunch of lying and nonsense. I mean, bingo, is that it? Bingo? It's a horrible statement. It's a terrible freaking liability. It's a blight. Religion is a fucking blight. It doesn't sound like, it's just antique. It's just like the old version of the car, and it's not quite as cool as this new science version of the religion, where we can wormhole into other galaxies and boo 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 boo. Yeah, just another religion.
Reference to God or supernatural forces has disappeared. And
so he says supernatural has disappeared when, again, modern physics is just full of supernatural. The whole physics is supernatural. None of it has a cause. None of it has, you don't have to explain where the energy comes from. You don't have to do anything. Stuff just pops out of the empty space, and then it pops back into the empty space. I mean, it's so full of made-up, nothing, vacuous, non-explanation explanations. They're just as bad as God says so. Their explanations are that bad. Well, that's not what I wanted.
Rather, the challenge that we're faced with now is, what do you do about things like purpose and meaning and right and wrong in a world that is just obeying the laws of physics all the time?
Yes, and all that can be figured out by just having a logical conversation, right? It's like the Sam Harris argument, okay? The value landscape, or whatever he called it, moral landscape. It's right there to be viewed. You can see the landscape, and what does the landscape have in it? It's just bad experiences being had by sentient beings and good experiences. And there's this idea that you can economize and maximize the number of positive experiences and minimize the number of bad experiences. That's it. What's so complicated? There's the moral landscape, and so your friggin' obligation as an individual is obviously to mitigate against harm, not to do things that are likely to cause grief and harm and sadness and tragedy and all that kind of crap. And so what's so complicated? Nothing's complicated. It's dirt simple. Why don't you just say it's dirt simple? Science says so. Science says it's dirt simple. I mean, there's nothing else here except these stupid experiences. Now, I can look at the rest of the world and say, their Walmart shopping day of fun, getting their slushy and their whatever, their cotton candy or some bullshit, and I can mock it as, well, no, if that's what you're going to do, if that's what you're going to make as a robot, I certainly wouldn't pay anything to support that. I don't want to take that and shoot it into space, Fuck that. It's retarded. And I can look at my own ambitions and desires, and I can say they're just as trivial. The whole thing is trivial. You're accomplishing nothing, and you're risking everything. It's the worst gambling house you can imagine. There's nothing to win here. There's only lose. See if this works.
So we say religion's been replaced by spirituality, philosophy.
By something.
Oh, yeah, by something. So why don't you just make it clear? No, spirituality is nonsense, okay? It's just more nonsense. But they can't say that because their entanglement is just the same thing as the spirituality. They might as well say it's back in play again, because we have this magical entanglement, and somehow my atoms are entangled with your atoms, and boo. It's just such bullshit.
I don't think that we know. I don't think that, and exactly.
We know. Yeah, we do know. We've had a very long experience here on Earth. There's been people who have written it down, all the great fun, all the fun little wars, the tragedies, the rapes, the pillages, the dismal deaths, the horror, 9 out of 10 of my children died before they reached 17. Lots of stories, lots of grief and horror right there in front of you to be displayed. We already know what the game is, so why are you pretending it's all got some mission statement, it's all going somewhere? Science doesn't say so. Science says we're deterministic robots. That's what everything is. Everything is stuck being, this screwdriver is stuck being this stupid screwdriver. The atoms on it are stuck being a screwdriver. You're stuck being a person that had certain experiences, went through certain life things. You have certain preferences, and you like whatever, jelly donuts or something. Yeah, we're all coming from some place. And the argument is there's a rational view of this place we're in and what we are in it. You can properly identify the difference between the piece of chalk and the screwdriver. And you can explain that screwdrivers make lousy chalk and chalk makes a lousy screwdriver.
The same way that we don't understand quantum mechanics. There are people like myself.
Right, so you don't understand it because it doesn't first say anything reasonable. It just says some wooey crap about how things aren't things. This is not really this. It's really a waving thing in 5-dimensional space doing some sort of wooey, it has a hat on and, whatever. It has no description. You've lost all will to accurately understand the machine. It's like an alien did show up, and he was a little square box, with 2 little antennas sticking out, and he went beep, beep, beep. It was R2-D2. And you'd be sitting there looking for, where's your organs? Where's your pancreas? You have these expectations that you're imposing on it instead of just describing it for what it is. So because we're full of this goo, you've turned us into some sort of goobot that somehow is special, that's somehow different than every other software, mechanical program thing exists. And we're just that. People aren't born capable of doing magic. And there is no magic. People don't grow new arms. There's no miracles. None of that crap is part of a rational description of the mechanism. A rational description says there are things, and things do specific things when they hit each other, and there's specific outcomes, and it's just dice being bounced around. And again, you're trying to make up some kind of crap that the faces of the dice are morphing as the dice is bouncing. That somehow it doesn't have a face and it gets randomized by some magical process. When no, there's no magical process. There's hitting and bouncing in very specific ways, and you're just pretending there's something else happening, and there's nothing else happening. And these are the smart people that can't escape aggrandizing, just a fun bias applied to everything. It's too boring if it's just a robot. I have to make it into something.
Who think that we understand quantum mechanics, but other people don't agree with us. There's not a consensus. And there are people like me who think we have ideas about how to live purposeful, meaningful lives in a world governed by the laws of physics, but there's certainly no consensus. And I would say that as a race, as a species, we human beings have done an even worse job facing up to this problem than we've done facing up to the challenges of quantum mechanics.
Well, they're both you've done the same failure. Again, your physics is clearly so weakly evidenced and full of extraordinary claims. Extraordinary claims, very, very weakly evidenced. And you're just doing the same thing to philosophy and to perspective regarding what does evolution mean as a function. What does it mean that we are long descendant from creatures that basically produced, dozens or hundreds of offspring for the mere purpose of having them chew each other's legs off and seeing who could survive, who would win this carnage, this race of carnage, this just the worst kind of warfare. War with the world, war with your competitors, war with everything. It's a horrible story, and you all glibly, it's just a philosophy. It doesn't have anything to do with reality. So he concedes you're doing a terrible job, and yet he's part of the terrible job because all he's doing is propagandizing for the same myopic view of reality, where we just keep pretending God's purpose is in there somewhere, and we'll just change God into Mother Nature. The circle of life. La 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 la. Garbage.
And yet, if you polled most of America now, how many would say creationism is why we're here?
A lot of them, but a declining number. You know, the fastest growing religious group in the U.S. are the unaffiliated, the nuns, the people who say that they have no religion.
So I'd say he's sort of wrong, because obviously we're importing religious kooks. We're importing dumbasses who come from a civilization that's shit because they voted for it to be shit, and we're letting them turn our civilization into shit with their silly, stupid, archaic, primitive, retarded, and dumb values. So again, you can say the statement that somehow it's growing, okay, but I think the real argument is no. If you took all the world population, you're losing ground, not gaining ground. The dumbasses are reproducing at whatever 5 times the rate of the smartasses, and idiocracy is well on the move, and he doesn't even get that.
Affiliation.
Okay, gotcha.
It's still, you know, being an atheist is still the one thing that will prohibit you from getting elected in any election in the United States. There's a senator from Arizona who is like...
It really won't. It's just that none of the ones who are atheists have any passion for it or any will to make a rational argument. So, you know, you have to be a candidate, can't be an idiot and an imbecile. But I'm sure if somebody was... you could get... it is possible. I mean, obviously in one of those red states, you're not going to get too far. But I think certainly in the East or West Coast, it's perfectly viable to be an atheist and get elected, as long as you're don't seem like you're a threat to any of the decent values.
bisexual, you know, all these crazy
fighter
things.
pilot
But
or something.
and she's also atheist, but won't admit it. Like it's easier to be a bisexual senator than an atheist senator.
And what does that tell you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's changing rapidly as these things do, but that's what.
So he says it's changing rapidly, and again, the demographics of the world are indicating it's going exactly the opposite way. The just like the money, it's getting held by a fewer, smaller and smaller percentage have more and more wealth, and a larger and larger percentage are dumbasses. I mean, it's right here in your face. I mean, Idiocracy was kind of a silly, stupid movie. I mean, frankly, they could have done so much more with that movie. But yeah, it's a real phenomenon. It's happening right before our eyes. And none of these people are panicked about that. And the point is they can't do anything to fix it because they've made what they call intelligence, they've put it out here somewhere. Like you can't have it unless you can do quadratic equations and all of this other stuff, because somehow that has something to do with reality. That's reality, when it's it's clearly not. You can draw pictures of reality.
We are right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also there's a spiritual component coming in, whereas even if there's no God or creationism,
Right, and this guy is so guilty of it, right? This whole show is nothing but crap about LSD, that's the magical place to go, ayahuasca or whatever it is, all this bullshit, homeopathic nonsense, hug therapy. I mean, it's all just such sappy bullshit, feeding exactly the idiocracy, feeding the idiots with bullshit placebo nonsense, just complete rubbish snake oil shit. As a fucking perspective. This isn't going to save anything or help anybody. This is just more tell the dumbasses what they want to hear. Teach them how to spin in a circle because it's fun.
I see this a lot in new media. People want to believe in something else, energy, whatever, something out there. And so it's not like we're out of the woods.
And I think that's just a transitional phase. We're holding on a little bit of the remnants of...
Okay. Yeah, I wish that you could make that argument as a solid argument that this is just the hiccup, before the good, healthy burp, before you really get to looking at things seriously, and respecting intelligence. But I think the other argument could be made is that intelligence peaked and now it's all downhill because you don't really have any mechanism. There's no reward and punishment mechanism. There's no mechanism to put intelligence back where it belongs. Because intelligence isn't going to make somebody, it's not going to give them like it did in the past. There was this huge relationships between intelligence and curing your headache, right? The witch doctor actually did have some voodoo that worked. And, you know, real intelligence, and especially now, it isn't going to really be able to give you anything. You know, it's going to give you a headache, maybe, okay, because it's a burden, it's not going to be a pleasure. And they can't sell that to the idiocracy. They can't sell something that's not going to give them more power or more cotton candy. If it doesn't make their cotton candy fluffier and pinker, they're not going to be interested in what intelligence has to say. Because the only way intelligence ever got respected is because it gave them cars and it gave them, you know, electric frying pans and, you know, conveniences. And without those conveniences tied to the intelligence, without the party favors, without the gifts you're going to give them, there's no way to have them give you any respect and to give you any power.
The old way of thinking about things, but it's very much analogous to the quantum mechanics situation. You know, in quantum mechanics, physicists had this problem they were faced with very cleanly and crisply in 1927, and they failed to address it. And something...
Right, and you're still failing to address what came before in 1926, but you're still failing to address the biggest point of what the early 1900s demonstrated, which was all of a sudden, instead of like Newton, where you had to say, gee, you know, I can tell you what it does, but I don't know how it does it. So instead of being that, you decided you're going to tell us how it does it, even though you don't know how it does it. And you're just going to make up these little fake magical mechanisms that somehow make the universe go, when they're not good answers. They're not even close to what you think a right answer would be. They're overtly silly. I mean, the nothing tells the something what to do. I mean, it's just that silly that somehow time is a dimension when it's clearly some linear thing. It's not in some kind of frame. It's not in some sort of box somewhere. It's just silly.
Move to fill the void. You know, that's why there are books on quantum healing and quantum yoga and quantum leadership, and none of these have anything to do with quantum mechanics, really, but there's a mystery there.
Yes, but quantum mechanics has nothing to do with quantum mechanics. So the book on quantum mechanics has nothing to do with quantum mechanics. Because the whole point of quantum mechanics in the first place was a recognition of this thing that happens, you know, it's really just electrodynamics. It really just has to do with how the interaction between the force, the energy, and electrons and protons. And that's really the only thing, and that's the thing they can't put any nails in that at all, because they got this silly idea of bent space moves electrons and protons, and then they have this idea that no, it's a virtual photon, and it's virtual because we can't account for its existence, because we don't know where it's coming from, because magnets seem to have energy that has no explanation. And the easy explanation is the energy was always there, and it's you only see it when there's an imbalance in it. And once you figure that out, you've figured out the story. There's you can understand why it's quantized. You can understand why it's you know, why there's energy in systems, because it's just about how much you imbalance the system. So all you have to do is get it tipping, and then you can watch all the energy flow out of the system.
Filled in. I think there's a precisely analogous situation with the meaning of life, right? Where if you say that it's not because God put us here, and the meaning of life is to serve God or understand Him or come to know Him, then what is it?
I know, but that's just so dumb. I mean, it should be a non-starter to say we're just going to believe in it because some ancestor told us this stupid fish story. So if they told us a fish story that there's dragons in the ocean and you can catch dragons by using peanut butter, right? You put some peanut butter on your hook and you can catch dragons. I mean, would they just really go out in the ocean and sit there and try to catch dragons? I mean, this is a silly, stupid, archaic, dumb, idiotic theory. God is a dumb, stupid, old, retarded, ignorant theory. It has no viability. No reasonable person is religious. It's unreasonable.
And, you know, maybe the answer's not easy, but at least facing up to the question and giving our best effort of giving an answer to it would be useful. And some people do it, but it's not like it's widely spread.
Whatever that means, some people do it. Who's doing it? Who's taking any account for the fact that your theories are mushy and your evidence is incredibly weak? No, your theories are silly and your evidence is weak. Where are you taking any account for that? Oh,
what is the meaning of life, Sean?
I think it's up to people to create. I think that it's not...
All right, so there we go. What is the meaning of life, Sean? I think it's up to people to create. So it's not like science where you discover it, right? So clearly you discover the theory of evolution in the sense you discover the correlation between these facts and the fact that, oh yeah, I can understand this entire mechanism, right? I can watch one lizard, and I can watch a tortoise, and I can watch some birds, take a look at them, and I can see a pattern in all of these things that's indicating something, that they weren't always this. That if I go back far enough, their great grandmother looked completely different. We can see that in our own ancestry all over the place. I mean, do you see yourself in any of your ancestors? I can't find any of them that look like me. But anyway, so it's right there in front of us. So it's a fact. So we can understand the Earth is this really old thing. This biology has morphed, dozens or hundreds or thousands of times. There's been these radical changes in what the goo looks like. That's playing the game. First it was a ocean game, and then it became a land game, and then some of the land stuff went back into the ocean. I mean, it's this whole story, and that story says a lot about what the meaning is, because the meaning is that we're just built to be replicators of a DNA molecule. That's the end game. And now we can play a different game because we have intelligence. So all of my ancestors were stuck just playing a dumb game because there was no way to escape it, no way to walk up the maze and walk on the top of the maze and cheat the stupid game, the programming. But we can do that now. We can stand on top of this thing and say, is this worth doing? I mean, is it really worth any of this? Let's just put some planks down, get to the middle, eat our brownies, and get the fuck out of here. I mean, what are we playing with this for? This meat grinder. We can see it for what it is. We can climb up onto the edge, and we can see the grinder and the handle of the circle of life going round and round and round, and there's nothing coming out that means anything. It's just ground up dead shit. There's nowhere to go with this crap.
I think there's no unified, unique answer to that question. I think the different
Okay, I mean, it's just so silly. There's no unified and unique. Those are two silly words. There's a ton of unique answers, and they're all wrong. Okay, but the point that there wouldn't be a right answer. There's a right answer to the question. There's a list of facts that you can put together where those facts are all solid, reliable, and they will be true. Okay, they're if someone was to get to the end of the universe and get to the where all the truth was to be written, their version of it, the one we're writing now, and the real version are going to be essentially the same story. And I think we have more than enough intelligence to write a really good description of the reality, the meaning, the reality, the function, what the hell the damn thing is. And he's pretending it's somehow out of reach again. Somehow there's some fact that's too mysterious or too wooey. No, there aren't any. Okay, even the part we can't videotape, we can make models of it that are pretty solid. And what are their models? Their models are full of 400 particles that don't exist for more than a trillionth of a second. A bunch of wooey nonsense that's completely irrelevant. When the real model is, electrons and protons move. And they're moved because a force hits them. And that's it. And that's all we are, is the nuance that develops because those two particles have an inverse relationship. And that's it.
Come to existence with different wants, desires, cares, right? I wrote a whole book about this, the big picture, where I say...
Yeah, and I can't imagine what a pile of tripe it must be. So, anyway, horrible. Just horrible. But I'll have to, maybe I'll go try to find that one. But yeah, no, it's got to be horrible. Never mind.
Now, the mistake is to think that there's something called a meaning to life. There are meanings.
So the mistake is to think there's a true answer, a right answer, that includes facts like evolution. That would be a mistake. To think that evolution is the correct answer, that would be a mistake. It would be a mistake to draw obvious conclusions about what the universe is doing, in the sense that, well, quite obviously there's parts of the universe that are billions of years older than the Earth. obviously this crap hasn't developed all over the place. It's not making any noise. It's not demonstrating that intelligence conquers all. None of that seems at all possible or at all realistic as a perception of the reality. And when we look at the actual evolutionary history, when you do the Dawkins thing and take some kind of serious look at it, you see there's all these one-time events that were preposterously unlikely, in the sense they only happened once out of all the permutations of all the times the guy pulled the string to get the engine running, right? Only 1 in a trillion pulls works. It's this impossibly unlikely event, like the decay of a radioactive element. For any one atom, right, it takes trillions and trillions of their years, okay, before this decay thing happens, before the unlikely event of somebody, shooting through 2 of the sewers at exactly the same time and the thing meeting in just the right moment and blah blah blah. And that's what our reality is made of. It's insanely improbable that chemistry would end up evolving into these insanely complicated organisms.
Then, and you might want to say, well, why do I bring this one rather than the other one? And why am I 6'1"? Like, there's a whole bunch of environmental and personal factors that are very contingent and go into making them. It's subjective, but not arbitrary. It's
so again, the difference is most of it is irrational. It doesn't. Yes, most of that doesn't. There's no rationality to the facts of certain circumstances, where you're born and how tall you're going to be in your genetic code, and all of that stuff really doesn't have anything to do with this conversation. The only part of the conversation that means anything is what kind of information has the human race as a collective gleaned, and what part of it is reasonable and rational and likely to be the truth. And that's all we're supposed to be doing and being programmed by. And that's the objective. And the only way you deter off of that obvious course, in the sense that it's a pretty rigid. You can't logically escape it once you've conceded certain things about the laws and rules of evidence. Once you're a fair juror, okay, there's no other way to interpret this evidence. I mean, the evidence for evolution is overwhelmingly, the table is stacked with tons and tons of evidence. There's nothing on the God table. Nothing. There's no credible evidence on the God table. Not a single bit of credible evidence.
Relative to me, but it's not like anything goes. Like, there's some things I want out of life and some things I don't. And happily, other people have very similar things that they want, right? Penn Jillette, the magician.
Maybe that's how you see it, right? So maybe that's the world you live in. I doubt it, though. I doubt if you had to live in the real streets where the real people live, that you'd find that world at all. Oh, yeah, these people want just what I want. And I don't think that's what you'd see.
In Penn and Teller has this wonderful line where he's a well-known atheist, and I think that he exaggerates.
Another show atheist, right? He takes no responsibility for what atheism means, in the sense that, yes, it means evolution as a fact. And it means that we're part of a system that justifies and endorses murdering children. That's how it works. It murders the youngest and the most vulnerable, the disabled, just the minor cripples and the unlucky. It beats the crap out of the unlucky. All right? And it has so little to do with deserve and earn. So tiny shreds of deserve and earn in evolution. It really is a terrible system in terms of what it says success means. Success can be derived through such brutal and cynically awful mechanisms. They're just glibly saying, oh yeah, the famous person who believes that, who understands that. No, he doesn't understand any of it. He hasn't taken any responsibility for the story he said is true. None. And he's endorsing it. He's just an asshole.
The actual story, but he says, someone asks him, if you don't believe in God, what prevents you from just murdering and raping everyone you want? And he says, I do murder and rape everyone I want. I just don't want to, right?
Right. Now, who believes that? Who believes that anybody sitting on this earth and they can't find anybody worth murdering or raping? I'd say the rape thing is a little too obvious in terms of you're getting some sort of gratification out of it. But you'd certainly say there are people who deserve to be raped. So, you should probably, it's your duty to rape them because they deserve it. But this idea that you don't think Penn Jillette has contempt for a huge number of human beings, that he would say, geez, the planet will be so much better if I whack that fucker. I mean, bullshit. Okay, that's just such a lie that you can't think of anybody who needs it. Please. What stops you is going to prison and the hassle of being arrested and, the messiness of it. Oh, I don't want to get blood on me, and it's kind of disgusting, and that's what stops people.
And I think that's the point. Like, even though there's no divine commandment that we should be nice to each other, most people actually want to be nice.
See, more crap, right? And so we know from all these native cultures that they all go on genocidal raids. It's the only way the American Indians created equilibrium, a balance, a synergy with their environment, is they had to constantly kill each other. I mean, it's just such bullshit.
Nice to each other in some ways, and there's this project we have to face up to, both personally and interpersonally, to figure out what it means to us to be a good person, and to figure out what other people want, and then to learn a little.
Oh no, see, that's just so silly. No, instead of finding out the truth, we'll just go find out what other people want, and I'll see what I want, and then we'll end the conversation right there. We won't have any conversation about what we should want. What you should want is to stop torturing things. You should stop torture. Torture is useless and stupid, and it is the cost of existence. And if you can't make that a moderate cost, a tiny cost, an infinitesimally small cost, then how can you justify what you're doing? You're saying it's okay for my fun, I'll torture him. Yes, the loser, the sucker, the dupe. The disposable things that are part of the circle and grinding up. Yes, I don't care about them. Fuck you.
Together on the basis of those insights.
Yeah, and I think this is a fascinating time in history where I think a lot of people are coming to terms that these old ancient religions aren't for them. And yet,
and yet they're grasping for any kind of stupid fable story about a multiverses and wormholes and the last faster and speed of light, and I'm gonna go to the Universal Bar and see the elephant trunk people and playing the flutes and boo 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 boo. I mean, it's bad as a religion. It's worse than a religion. Again, it's not getting anywhere. I'm going to get transhumanized and have a bunch of extra arms, and it's going to be so cool. No, it's going to be ridiculous.
Dr. Rupert Sheldrake in here has a book called Science and Spiritual Practices.
Science and spiritual practices. Yeah, those two kinds of phrases go together. Sheldrake is obviously a nutter. This is pathetic. I mean, selling the new age religion. Just remanufacture the same silly, stupid bullshit lies in some sort of form that, well, they're not wearing those boring robes, and they'll have bigger penises, and our new cool, the new cool God makes penises bigger. Pathetic.
He goes into all of the spiritual practices. Those all seem to make us feel really good as humans. They connect us, whether we're fasting or doing pilgrimages or singing together. Or
God, it's like my nightmare. It's like I'm supposed to somehow think that's all kumbaya crap isn't anything but a joke. I mean, it isn't anything that you just don't make a joke out of as really great experiences in your life. Are those kumbaya moments? Oh, they're the first that come to mind. Well, yeah, maybe it's true if you got to play strip poker with the girls and blah, 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 blah when you're 15, but the rest of it is, there's no kumbaya moments. It is all just such crap. They won't show me all of these, whatever these people are, that I can't show something just as ludicrous. I mean, they're just like going to a rave or going to some dance thing or something. This is just about silly humans, and they just want to do some sort of silly dancing thing. A little dancing and prancing thing, and that was just so cool. And I really reached the peak of being alive and meaningful because I was doing some herky-jerky bullshit. I mean, it's so fucking demeaning to our intelligence. And that's all these people are selling. They're not selling smart, they're selling stupid.
Paying homage or gathering as a group, like those are all really important to being human and feeling connected and having purpose.
Yeah.
And yet, when they get...
How so, exactly? How the fuck so? Yeah, sorry, nobody can connect those dots and explain to me how that's anywhere near true. That really is, those are your precious memories. No way.
Mixed up with a religion that says, do this, don't do this, then people lose interest. So it's a weird time now where people are trying to find a new way of having these practices and feeling connected and feeling that morality you're talking about or whatever.
Just being an imbecile and feeling good about just being retarded. Let's all be retarded. Let's eat shit. Let's, eat our cotton candy, look at our balloon, go, balloon, pink, pink. That's it. That's his ambition for the human race, is that we all sit around and sing Kumbaya looking at our pink balloons. Pitiful.
Right.
Without it being, I don't know, potentially poisoned by a religion and everything that it brings with it.
Well, I think there's two separate issues going on that do get mixed up a little bit. One is, you're alluding to the fact that organized religion can have some serious downsides, right? Like, in my mind...
Right. But the only downsides is that it created some kind of system to keep people from being the true assholes they would be, okay? Because we truly would be assholes. I mean, that's what tribalism creates, that's what the gang warfare creates, and that's what the individual ambition creates, is a lot of scheming and plotting so the other guy loses and you don't lose. That's our real mission. And yes, religion imposes a fake morality, a fake notion of some kind of game rules, okay, that you can't kick the guy in the nuts, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it creates a superficial and not very deep or well organized rules that keep people from killing each other, hurting each other in some ways. They'll hurt each other in lots of other ways, but they'll glorify, the baby throwing out with the bathwater thing. They'll do really stupid things because God says bathwater is holy. But the other part is it offers the candy of, it's you're going to go to heaven and have special kumbaya moments all the time. They sing kumbaya all day in heaven, and it's just little fires, and they all toast their marshmallows, and it's all so special. So they promise the candy, and they impose some sort of rule games. So they give you a silly notion of what you're accomplishing, like you're scoring your goals. The goals you're scoring are somehow adding up points, and so you're going to get more hookers, when you go to heaven. Some sort of bullshit like that. So it seduces you to play the game because they're offering you some candy. They're offering you escape from a dismal death and meaningless life and all of that crap. And the price you pay for that is there's some of these little rules that make the game more civilized. But barely, because the rules are too simple. The rules are too dogmatic and not rational. And therefore you can hurt animals and you do all kinds of other damage because God didn't include any of the more rational edicts against harm. And then the alternative is this new smart person says, well, that's all crap, okay? Their morality was crap, and their promises are crap, and their whole description of the game is crap. Here's the real description, and they're just selling the same thing. They're selling kumbaya, take some LSD, do this to get your little glory moments, your little whatever, immunity from reality. And that's all they're doing. They're just creating a fake game in a fake space that doesn't even exist. It's just another in the clouds heaven thing they're promising, and it doesn't really. The promise isn't there. You're just creating heroin addicts. You're not doing anything else.
I know not everyone agrees with me, but in my mind, the fact that the Catholic Church does not allow women to be priests is utterly disqualifying to take them seriously, really, as a view of the world. Like, it's just an ancient kind of tradition that is not...
Yeah, one of the least of their crimes, right? So instead of pointing out this idiotic notion you should have kids you can't take care of, that sex has something to do with procreation, that it has to. I mean, all these things are the silliest things. Who gets to wear silly hats? Oh, well, women should be allowed to be silly just like the men.
Changed very much. Don't tell me that that's like leading the world and being moral. And I get that, and at the same time, I'm very happy to say, like, the Catholic Church historically has created this amazing tradition of music and art and architecture, and I love
a tiny symptom, a tiny little residue. It's like saying the car crash, created some little bits of rubber on the road, and those little pieces of rubber, you can make them into like little snowman and something. You can make them into little, ornaments, and they're really cool. I mean, it's a silly, the catastrophe of religion, and you're going to sit there and say it gave us art? No, it was the only thing that financed it, so yeah, in that sense, but it stole the money. So if the money wasn't stolen by the church in the first place, they could have spent the money on art doing something that was a benefit to mankind in some way. But what do they do with money? They make coliseums, and they make these this just debauchery and bullshit. I mean, I guess you could argue the Greeks have a couple of old artifacts that were actually libraries. So you could say, yes, that's the place where art could thrive and where intelligence could be argued and all of this stuff. So that was some sort of rational investment. But all the other investments, all the other artifacts are all crap. Just a bunch of human blood and grease. The pyramids, for example, just a preposterous waste of resources to create what? Not some library, some spaceship for a dead guy to go fly through the universe. Some sort of just complete bullshit reason to build them.
Going into old cathedrals and looking at the stained glass and listening to the organ music and all that, because they're made by humans.
Oh yeah, they're made by deluded psychotics who wasted all these resources, killed people, just all the waste, the human waste that those stupid cathedrals represent, the wasted labor, the wasted resources, all just wasted for nothing to create an ornament to a frickin' fantasy. I mean, the most expensive totem poles in the history of mankind, and he's sitting there saying, oh, it's so pretty. I mean, he's so clueless.
Beings were really very talented, and hundreds of years ago, that's the tradition they would have moved in.
Right. That was their method of expression as
Exactly,
well.
right. And then the other, so there's the question of, does putting questions of purpose and meaning into an organized religious context bring some bad baggage with it? But there's another question, which is, how does the universe work? What is reality? How does it function?
Right, and religion has nothing to do with answering the question, and frankly, your science has nothing to do with answering the question. You're still chasing a bargain. You're still chasing, what's in it for me? I need to do intergalactic travel, or I'm not going to buy your theory. I mean, if it doesn't give me a warp drive, that's got to be garbage then, because that's not a good enough promise. You have to give me something, science. So you haven't got to the stage where the first scientific fact is science isn't here to give you something. Okay, it's here to give you the truth. Period. You may not profit from the truth. The truth might not be in your interest. Too fucking bad.
Even if it's not organized religion, I think that there are ways to be wrong about the nature of reality that can lead you astray. And there's certain versions of spirituality that qualify as just not getting reality right. So I think that
certain versions of spirituality, certain versions are wrong. No, they're all silly. There's no fucking such thing as a spirituality. There's no spirituality DNA. There's no spirituality anything. It's a silly, idiotic notion that there's some spirit thing. Your brain, when your heart ceases to pump, the connections between the neurons start to wither and die, and everything that you are, every memory you have, every essence of you disappears from existence in the universe as a pattern. The pattern no longer exists anywhere. It's gone. That's the truth. No spirit anywhere.
Up to reality is very important, and part of that is taking the laws of physics seriously and taking the fact that I obey the laws of physics seriously.
Okay, so again, you don't know the laws of physics. Your laws of physics are time is some idiotic dimension, which is loop-de-doo nonsense, that space is a substance of some kind that you can somehow compress or decompress in some sort of bizarre ways that you can't account for, the energy. What else can I say? you still haven't figured out that the pressure has to come from the outside, even though everything's in little balls and in little clumps and in little packages that are confined and stay intact. You keep pretending that somehow the energy's on the inside trying to get out. No, it's on the outside, pushing in.
Part of it is also recognizing that I would like to have a purposeful, meaningful life. So how do I get that? How do I get that in a way that is compatible with the laws?
Yeah, well, there is no way to get it compatible with the laws of physics, in the sense that if you're going to take responsibility for what evolution is, there's no compatible living with it. It's like compatibly living with Adolf Hitler and saying, okay, I'll play along just because I have to get my meals and blah, 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 blah. No, there's a point where you say, too ludicrous, too expensive, too crazy. No way I'm endorsing this. I'm not going to sup with the devil. I'm not going to sup with a bad system. I'm not going to put quarters in a machine that's creating pain and suffering, that's throwing it away, that's wasting it in preposterous proportions. No, I'm not going to feed it. That's what you need to say. Instead of finding compatibility. Well, I'll just not look. When he turns his ugly face at me, I just won't. I'll pretend I didn't see it. I'll avoid. Life is expensive. I'll avoid that. I don't want to hear that. My comfort is at somebody else's expense. No, I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that billboard. No. I mean, this is pathetic evasion.
Nature.
It's very much like quantum physics, what I find, is because it's not obvious how you get that, because there's a lot of things going on that aren't visible to the eye.
Yeah.
I used to think...
So more bullshit. There's a lot of things. No, the things that are going on that aren't visible to the eye are so frickin' simple, okay, and so mechanical and so redundant that you don't need to see them. You can just model them, get the idea. Okay, the electricity goes through the wire, it pushes electrons, the electrons push into the magnet, and the magnet creates a repulsive field, and that turns... Okay, it's not that complicated, it's not that wooey, it's not that mysterious. There really isn't anything to real physics that has any woo in it at all this entanglement crap and everything else. Yes, that is your new god, the new fake phony element that you've thrown into the real universe for no good reason except it satisfies you to think there's woo somewhere. There's real random somewhere. I'm really free to think anything. Bullshit.
That if I was personally successful and I made enough money, I would be happy. But I didn't realize
Right. If I need it and I want it, I can make 2 + 2 = 3. If it's to my advantage, I can do that. I can make it equal 17. Yeah, 2 + 2 = 17. I can make it do that. If it feeds me and it starves you, well, then it can happen.
My life was linked with everyone else around me and contributing and all this other stuff. It took me a long time to figure that out.
There's no shortage of simple, compelling answers.
I don't think you've figured out anything, you loop-de-doer. You keep wanting to reward the guilty and, in a sense, punish reality. And that's it.
That are completely wrong.
That's for sure true. What's the biggest takeaway you want from people to get from this book?
I think I just want to make sure that people know that quantum mechanics is science.
All right. Well, it really isn't. And the thing he's pushing is this idiotic notion that a photon goes past another piece of matter, like an electron, and just going past it. Oh, new universe created. He doesn't even concede that it actually has to hit it. Okay. But yeah, they have this dopey idea that things are interacting in some sort of, I don't need to touch you kind of way. When the photons, the forces have to touch something. But anyway, they think every time it makes a turn, every time it has an interaction with something else, a new universe is created. So there's a trillion new universes happening right inside this chalk right now. Trillions and trillions of new universes right here, let alone in the gigantic space around us. And each one is a fully functional universe. I mean, it's such a nonsensical, irrational, made-up pile of stupid, imaginary junk. I mean, it's just somebody sitting here saying, I can imagine this has eyeballs, and I can put a big nose on it, and I can give it, many penises, and I can do all, I can imagine anything. They have no evidence that any of this has any... There's no reason to believe it. It solves no problem in any sense other than I can take my mathematical errors and I can shove them under the rug. It's a complete indicated answer. There's absolutely no logical connection to anything real that creates this fantasy. Well, it's probably enough. Anyway, so I thought it was, there's enough triggers for philosophical conversation in there to play with it. So I played with it and such. And summing up, yeah, that's all. Yeah, again, I'm going to just keep asserting that the real, what's happening inside your head and in the world around you is all pretty understandable in terms of the connections between causes and effects. And you can see them in your own thinking. You can see them in your own, what you feel, in the terms of the patterns your own body has, in the regularness of some of that stuff. And likewise in the world, there's routines. This leads to that. And you can understand that to have a different world, to change it, you have to change the chain of cause and effect. You have to add something to cause a change. You have to make something happen differently. And and the same is true for the own patterns inside of your brain. Your brain first has to recognize something and say, okay, I got it. That's a real thing, battery. And then it has to remember battery. It has to throw it back in front of you every now and then so you know, oh yeah, I have to always see this in the context of the price being paid. I have to see the image of the skeleton now and then. I have to keep in mind what's really happening in front of me. It's not just sun and birds tweeting and blah blah blah. That it has a backstory, and all of this stuff comes with a price, and the price is way too high for any rational person to say, I'll buy the ticket. Okay, buying the ticket says, yes, I will incur some kind of unpleasantness, but more importantly, it imposes unpleasantness on a bunch of other feeling creatures, and you have to take responsibility for the price they'll pay. Not because they chose to, not because they had any interest in going to Las Vegas. You did. They shouldn't have to pay for it because you need to gamble. They need to suffer. I don't think so. I don't think it's reasonable. All right. So enough of the video, I think. So till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. We'll try to make a video during the week, but it just didn't happen this week. But maybe this week it will happen. We'll see how it goes and such.